Thank you. Very appreciated. So we have a topic here today where this is our rise of first-party data topic. And what we're seeing is we believe that first-party data is transforming our industry. And we mean first-party data, we mean advertisers, known audiences, the PII, the CRM data they have, the behavioral data that they have. And we believe that this data is fundamentally changing everything. So what we've done today is we've gathered 4 people who represent 4 different constituencies in our ecosystem. So we have an advertiser, an agency, a researcher, and a tech platform. So let me introduce each one of those individuals. I'm going to do this with my tech-assisted device so I get the names and titles right. So from a tech platform perspective, we have Neil Joyce. Thank you. Neil is the Managing Director of and SVP at Signal. And he's responsible for the North American and EMEA business at Signal. So next we have Mark Griffin. Mark, everyone. Mark is director at Starcom MediaVest. He's based in Chicago, and he's going to represent our agency side of the business. And he leads the Video Center of Excellence for Starcom. Next we have our researcher, Pat. Pat Pellegrini, PhD, is the General Manager and Chief Research Officer for Simmons Media. And so I'm sure you're all familiar with Simmons. And then finally, we have the advertiser. Probably should have done that first. And this is Glenn White. And Glenn White owns all of marketing infrastructure for Electronic Arts. So when you go home this weekend and you play Madden, that's that guy. Also, interestingly, Glenn came from an agency background and started off his career in the mid-90s doing digital and has been in the business for over 20 years. So the way this is going to go is each one of these constituencies, although we're going to put ad tech and agency together, is going to do a quick presentation, tell a story, and then we're going to do a panel afterwards that I'm going to moderate. So with that, I'd like to start off with our first one, the agency and platform folks. So come on down.
I guess I didn't make the slide. Good morning, guys. I hope you're all doing well. So Neil and I will be talking to you today a little bit about the rise of first-party data. And so what we wanted to start off with was a bit of a level set, right? When we're talking about first-party data, what we're really just talking about is a better understanding of people, right? That's it. We have a tendency to overcomplicate, we use complex language, it can be intimidating, but the reality is it's just about better understanding people, our consumers, the people that matter to brands. But what's happened and what's accelerating is it's becoming harder and harder to understand people and understand their behaviors. Due to the fragmentation of consumer behavior, viewing habits, the way they're changing, it's becoming really, really difficult. So even if you've got a really well-known, robust first-party data set, you know your consumers, it's really, really difficult to connect those consumers across different environments, different platforms, different devices. And Neil's going to go into that in a little more detail.
Thanks, Mark. So I think we've been having a lot of conversation over the last couple of days, not just about first-party data and defining it, but really thinking about how you really try and leverage that data as an asset as well. So many organizations from a brand perspective are pretty good about being able to connect kind of their offline data from a CRM and an eCRM perspective, but have been very dependent upon using cookies to purely extend their ability to target and recognize customers. So as Signal and some of our customers, we're starting to look at ways in which they start to leverage that data, but before you can even think about it, the ability to connect is a foundational capability that we're actually starting to take clients on that journey with. And when people talk about journey, everyone kind of seems to think it's like 3, it's 5 years, and what's the payback going to be? And as we go through some of these slides, we're going to start to talk about some of the financial impacts that you can actually leverage, because Mark will talk about some of the organizational challenges and actually opportunities that are actually there through first-party data. But clearly, we're all in financial businesses. Keeping momentum against economic impacts is going to be absolutely vital. So with that in mind, let's really think about first-party data in terms of, can it provide competitive advantage? Many organisations are really asking a lot of questions around all of that. But does it have to be competitive advantage? Should it just be your business as usual now? Okay? Everybody's had legacy businesses. They've carried out targeting and engagement with customers to varying degrees, but have they elicited incremental share of wallet? And that's where this next slide really comes into the fore. So this is actually one of our customers who we're working with who are fairly formative down in Australia right now. Very, very rich data business, so very strong around transactional and loyalty data, which some of you in the audience will be thinking, well, look, those guys have a head start. They know who's buying the product, they're engaging in store, and they're swiping a loyalty card. I don't have a loyalty card, so what do I do? Before we get to there, let's just think about these guys, right? They can recognize somebody as they engage with them and shop, but can they engage with them and recognize who they are when they're off-site? So that's where we started with these guys, basically. Really piece together the ability to collect all of that data, resolve it back to a person, not a cookie, but a person, and then leverage the saturation off of their email program to target people through programmatic and display. And look, as you can see, there's pretty impressive results, okay? This isn't about a long-term engagement, this is about immediate campaign-based results. The reason why it's so important to build that up is we all know this is about momentum. You need support, you need economic buy-in across the business. So by just doing something fairly simple, which this is, it enabled that client to keep the investment rolling into their organisation. And this is a really, really good segue into Mark's next piece. So Mark's going to talk to everyone about the journey. Okay, we've all heard it before, but there's some vital components around it. So think about this context around high impact, quick return results to keep organisation momentum as he talks about some of the approaches that we've got.
Thanks, Neil. So to Neil's point, this is a journey, right? The example that he just took you through really proves the value of the approach, right? Understanding your consumers better. But that was a 3-year process. That took a really, really long time. But what we see here, by adopting a data-centric approach, by understanding your core consumers, right? Getting your first-party data set in order, there's a real opportunity to break down silos and to use data as a rallying point for your organization. Now, this is easier said than done, and when we talk to a lot of organizations, we hear hurdles about barriers, internal divisions. Maybe there's an offline department, maybe there's an online department, maybe there's a CRM team working over here. Perhaps the agencies aren't partnering as well as they might. A number of different stakeholders with vested interests. But we really see a clear data strategy as an opportunity to harness all of those stakeholders, bring them together with a clear purpose. And it also allows us to focus on metrics that matter and focus on accountability of all our activity. So by understanding our consumers better, by having that first-party data, we're able to work towards real conversions, right? Using real attribution techniques to understand the value of all of our activity straight through the line. A huge opportunity. And with that, a point that I don't think has been raised too much, but I think in the next 5 years we're going to see a huge surge here. This actually will fuel a huge renaissance in the creative work that we produce, right? I think right now there's still a bit of legacy thinking around how creative's produced, the kind of mass reach approach, and we're really at the spearhead, I would say, of understanding consumers, understanding their value, and then beginning to segment them, looking at key identifiers among those segments, and then creating custom content, serving it directly to them. Those capabilities exist today, but there's a bit of a breakdown in that ecosystem, whether that's between agencies or within internal marketing departments. Increased relevance in creative will equal increased effectiveness. There's no question about that. So this is a huge opportunity in the next few years. And an interesting anecdote here. I've spent the last probably 12 months or so working on addressable TV specifically in the US. So about a third of TV households in the US are addressable enabled. And what's been really fascinating to me is that TV has been the gateway for a lot of clients accessing their first-party data in media for the first time. There is a beautiful irony there, right? This medium that we consider old and blunt is sexy again. I think that's awesome. So a moment on scale. I think one of the perceptions around first-party data is it's great, right? It's great if you can organize it, but how are you activating it and how are you driving scale? Because reach is really important. So I work in a market like the US, and there's 350 million people, and you've got to reach them all. Reach will continue to be important. But how we think about reach must fundamentally change, right? We are no longer interested in, are you driving 70% reach against women 18-49? That is a dated metric. What we're interested in is a greater understanding of consumers so that we can begin segmenting them by their value to us. So whether we start with a loyal group and then we look at groups based on their propensity to convert to our products or our offering or our service, and targeting that way, building reach that way. So every incremental dollar spent is spent targeting the right consumer. And that capability exists. I think you'll see growth in that approach. So we're doing good on time. In terms of getting there, it is a journey. I think we've got to remember that everything starts with the consumer. What do you know about your consumer? What are the different ways that you can collect data about your consumer to understand them and improve their experiences with your brand? Starts with that. The second thing is objectively assessing the landscape. This is a really complex area, right? There's a lot of muddled thinking. There's a lot of companies who claim to have the Holy Grail, claim to have the ability to seamlessly synchronize user IDs across contacts and across platforms. It isn't easy. I want to make that really, really clear. It isn't easy. So before taking the plunge, objectively assess the landscape. And then education of peers and key stakeholders. This is really, really important. So for addressable TV, right, I think about using a direct mail data set to buy TV. That's a capability now. The direct mail industry in the US is a $50 billion market. It's huge. Those data sets exist and can be easily transferred to different media. And then preparing for a cookieless future. I think there's been a lot of conversation around the cookie. The reality is there's a generation coming through who maybe won't access a desktop as frequently as they'll access a mobile. And I think certainly in developing markets, we're seeing huge mobile adoption before any other screen. And then finally, conversion attribution. So as we start working through these strategies and these different data approaches, it's really important to keep in mind, what's my ultimate KPI that I'm driving to? What's my business outcome? And can I measure it? So we've done some work with addressable TV, linking it to a website visit, right? Or a sale, or a real world location. Those things can happen now, and we should keep that in mind as we work through. And that's it.